That's nonsense, and nobody should be saying anything about defunding the police. I mean, and I would have no truck with that. I was Director of Public Prosecutions for 5 years. I worked with police forces across England and Wales, bringing thousands of people to court. So my support for the police is very, very strong and evidenced in the joint actions I've done with the police.
That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast. There is a little truth. Open up your eye while you're checking out the boombox. Check the exercise. Take the word overseer like a sample. Repeat it very quickly and approve, for example. Overseer, 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 officer, 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 officer. Yeah, officer from overseer. You need a little clarity? Check the similarity.
I just want to point out that the edge of that house there, on the edge of the roofing, the shadow looks like a bear.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
It's like a bear's face. That was it, thought Jones. He had done it. Whatever happened now, he would join the ranks of the immortals for this action. He was also aware that he was very likely to be shot dead in the next 10 seconds, unless he could explain to the shooters that this was a bad idea. So I'm guessing he was strapping together some kind of heart monitor, so the bomb will detonate if he dies.
Right.
So it's a dead man's switch. If you don't mind, he said, taking the microphone, it will be simplest if I do the talking from now on. Tonight, Mr. President, I will be Barry White. I should like to begin by pointing out to anyone who is thinking of shooting me that the bomb I am wearing is connected by electronic sensors to my heart and will detonate as soon as it senses that there is no pulse. If that happens, America will lose a president, Britain will lose much of its government, and the rest of you will be in a very bad way. So here, as they say in the movies, are my demands. Cameron had already worked out what Benedict and the two other Arabs, the ones sitting in front of her, would do next. The man in the jaleba reached down under his seat in the movement she had seen him rehearse. He flipped off the brass plaque. It clapped backwards onto her toes, chipping the varnish. "Hey," said Cameron, and then regretted the incongruous pettiness of her complaint. Here, the plaque reminded her, was the spot where Thomas More, patron saint of politicians, had been condemned to death. The man's hairy wrist shot down into the darkness to produce a plastic bag marked "right price," out of which he removed 2 Schmidt MP rapid-fire submachine guns. "Mais Benedict," said the French ambassador, turning to his girlfriend. The girl looked at the older man. She was beautiful, thought Cameron, with full red lips and skin that was startlingly pale for a Palestinian Arab.
Oh! That's what makes her attractive, is it? That her skin is pale.
Yeah. She's almost a kind of white.
Fuck you, Boris.
Et alors? Mais non, he shouted, and flung out an arm to restrain the two men as they rose. Benedict al-Walibi kept her eyes fixed on the ambassador, but with one hand she tapped her Arab colleague on the arm, borrowed a Schmidt, and shoved the muzzle hard into the soft fold under her lover's ribs. "Tais-toi, chérie," she said. Oh, this is so good. She is every bit as awesome as
The French ambassador's girlfriend, mate.
We knew from the very beginning she was going to be great.
And she is.
Oh god, I hope she just starts blasting.
I hope she kills Cameron. I hope she blows her fucking head to pieces.
I hope she just kills everyone.
Yeah. And then gets away scot-free with a French connection. Barlow she's her on the Eurostar.
Out of the corner of her eye, Cameron became suddenly aware that the Dutch ambassador was on the verge of heroism. His father had fought the Nazis. He knew that violence sometimes had to be matched with violence for the salvation of society. And anyway, he was full of the battle adrenaline and suppressed fury of one who has been freshly bombed by an ostrich egg. He made a nostril noise like a kettle coming to the boil, and was on the point of hurling himself upon Benedict when she whipped round and poked him in the chest with her gun. "You shut up too, bald man," she said.
Go, Benedict!
He slumped back.
Well, all of a sudden, in the closing act of this book, we've got a true hero.
We've actually got someone that we can root for.
I hope they send her after Barry Rivers. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
She just fucking caps the old prick and his fucking dickhead nephew.
When Cameron looked at him, with his morning dress streaked with the embryo of a flightless bird, with his expression of a stunned mullet, she felt instantly overcome. It was the shocking inversion of feminine aggression. It was the sight of the president, her president, handcuffed and humiliated. It was the gross impropriety of the submachine guns in this place to which even parliamentarians were not allowed to bring their swords. Along the bottom of her lashes brimmed tears as big as planets. She
What?
blinked.
There are some big ass tears. I mean, like, that's not... that would drown the entire Earth's population. That's
Yes.
fucked, man.
Yeah, so I suspect he might not be speaking literally. She blinked. They splashed to the floor, on the plaque, and on her feet. She looked up through the blur and saw someone walking through the rows towards her, unchecked by the gunman. He was someone she wanted to see. The man who would explain everything, or at least provide her with a theory. "Oh, Adam," she said. "Thank God." This is fucking pathetic.
It really is. I hope Benedict fucking kills her.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have the Chad Benedict going face to face with the Virgin Cameron. Fucking beautiful. In the Scotland Yard ops room, there was a moment of hush. Like all men in such positions, Deputy Assistant Commissioner Purnell and Colonel Blewett of the USSS work at every time.
Yeah,
Every fucking
Boris,
time.
you only really need to do that once,
Yeah.
maybe twice. Like,
It's not as if Purnell and Blewett are
Yeah.
hard to remember.
it's like every time you read their name, you just get a copy of their CV through
Yeah.
on your fucking email. You know what I mean? It's like, for fuck's sake, Boris. I know.
Jesus Christ, what are we waiting for? I've got 21 guns in that hall. Without consulting Purnell, the American flipped open the switch that connected him to the earpieces of the men in the hall. "Boys, this is Blewett."
It's the Blewett boys.
The Blewett boys. You blew it.
Do up.
Big Bill Blewett and his do-up boys. From their vantage points around the hall, the lynx-eyed USSS men started to whisper their options into the smarties on their lapels. He repeats himself so much.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
If you find that funny, then like I don't even know where to begin with you. I guess like some sort of
Gulag.
camp. Yeah. Well, at least we're thinking along the same lines.
Some kind of job camp that you live in forever. I got him, sir. I got that sucker whenever you want. It was Lieutenant Alan Kabash. High up and recessed into the east wall of Westminster Hall, just under the corbels of the hammer beams, is a series of huge murky alcoves. Hard to make out at any time, and almost invisible now in the overhead glow of the TV lights. Is he actually telling me that there are alcoves that are very good for shooting people? Is this actually happening?
That Yuri bloke's a funny fella, isn't he? He does yoga. The alcoves. What's he going on to you about the alcoves?
In one of these alcoves, Lieutenant Kabash had been waiting for an hour, hidden by the ancient friable skirts of Philippa of Hainaut. He was covered with soot, and his legs ached from being braced against Philippa's rump. Now he secretly slid his Glock barrel under Philippa's left breast and drew a bead on Jones, just 50 feet away. "I got him, sir," he repeated. "Then whack him," said Blewett. "No," said Purnell. "For God's sake, man, you heard what he said." "What's that, Stephen? Are you countermanding me here?" "Too damn right I am. You heard what he said. As soon as he dies, his fucking bomb goes off." "You believe that?" Across the hall, the USSS men listened in despair. Who the hell was in charge here? "I do believe it, until we somehow find evidence to the contrary." "Shall I shoot, sir?" asked Kabash. "No," said Purnell. "Oh, wait up, Kabash." Kibosh that Kabash. "Well, what do you frigging propose, Mr. Commissioner?" "Mr. Assistant Chief Assistant Commissioner Stephen Purnell."
If that is your real name.
"Sir, I've got Downing Street on the line. The Prime Minister, the head of MI5, the Cabinet Secretary, the Defence Secretary, the head of Counterintelligence, and a new Minister for Homeland Security were being hustled into Cabinet Office Briefing Room A, or Cobra. Normally their number would have included the Home Secretary, but the Home Secretary was in Westminster Hall. Why weren't they all there? Why is the Prime Minister not there?"
Yeah, that's fucked. So the President of the United States comes over to give a speech and the Prime Minister's like,
I ain't going. Fuck that shit.
although that makes sense now, to be fair, with this fucker as our Prime Minister.
Fuck that noise.
Yeah, fuck that, man. I'm going to go have a wank in Cobra.
Fuck that, I'm going to Vegas. I mean, at least you're getting a bit of excitement.
Oh yeah, no, I've much preferred today's session than basically any of the others. At least stuff is sort of happening.
It's beginning to happen.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic that things may be afoot.
Doings are afoot.
Happenings are a doing.
Get out here, son. There's a doings a transpiring.
The President and Jones the Bomb stood. I mean, he now is literally Jones the Bomb.
Yeah.
The President and Jones the Bomb stood at the head of the congregation like a shackled pair of slaves about to be auctioned.
Well, they're in the right place for it.
Just as we were saying we were enjoying it, he goes and cracks that old fucking chestnut out.
Oh, fuck. He does that a lot, doesn't he?
Well, act like a cunt, yeah. As he waited for his yoke mate to outline his demands, the President looked and was not reassured. He saw a nose so hooked that Jones could easily touch it, and sometimes did, to the horror of anyone sitting opposite him in the tube, with the tip of his tongue. What a fucking arsehole. He saw the bags under his eyes, shiny and dark as plum sauce, and now the eyes with their odd vibration were upon him. Out of the way, hissed Jones. The President was taken aback. Say what? Move, said Jones, shoving on the handcuff. Listen, buddy, we're kind of hooked up here. If you want to let me go, you'll be doing the right thing. Shut up and move and say nothing more, or else you'll be shot. The President understood. So far they had been sharing the lectern, like a couple of pop stars crooning into the same microphone. And now Jones wanted to take charge. See, I told you. Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be Donny Osmond. He had been here a couple of times to case the joint, and had picked up some of the essential history. Oh, good.
Oh, don't. Oh, for fuck's sake, Boris.
Ladies and gentlemen, listen very carefully to me, and do exactly as I say, and no harm will come to you. I know that this is a traditional introduction to a speech by a lead terrorist, but in this case it happens to be true.
I love how it's like Boris trying to act like, oh, he's been to these places and that places and he's fucking his real world experience, and it's supposed to be based on that, and yet it's clearly just based on like films that he's seen.
Yeah, he watched Die Hard once.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hundreds of years ago, more than 350 years ago, a king was put on trial on this very spot. His name was Charles, and he was a bad king.
He was a bad king.
Yeah, that's what they found. They found him to be bad.
So they cut his head off, which was good.
He took the money that belonged to the poor people. He was oppressive, and he acted in a way that was arrogant and outside the law.
That reminds me of someone. Charles I had way better hair than Boris Johnson, but other than that, like...
The comparison is basically one for one. He believed that he had some kind of divine right to do what he wanted, and so they brought him here, and they put him on trial, and then they chop-head off his head. Chop-head.
What? No, seriously.
That's not me. That's the...
Oh, fuck.
Chop-head.
Off.
In the country where I come from, it is of course the practice that if people commit great crimes, their heads are chop-head off. You like to say that this is barbaric, and so I point out that all your great British democracy, all your parliament, comes from that moment when the king's head is chop-head. And was that not the right thing to do? No, said Sir Perry Granger, speaking for Henley-on-Thames, in the royalist rump of Oxfordshire. It was completely wrong. And anyway, it's not chop-head, it's chopped.
Oh, fuck yourself.
Right, Granger, you're next. Yeah. Chopped or chop-head, whichever you like. It's fucking happening right here and now, buddy boy. Shut your face, said Jones the Bomb. Well, you did ask, said Sir Perry, but Jones had unstuck a Browning taped to the small of his back. Don't say another word, or I will shoot. All right, keep your hair on. The noise of the automatic was so loud that some thought the end had come, and that Jones had let off his bomb. The bullet was travelling in roughly the direction of Sir Perry, but connected first with the Dutch ambassador's left ear. This was protected by a sturdy German-built hearing aid, which clattered to the floor, while the bullet flattened itself harmlessly 150 yards away against the far wall.
That was such an exciting action sequence, wasn't it?
The Dutchman groaned and started to bleed. Cameron put her arm around him. It really wasn't his day. A few seats away, a distinguished lady peeress began to cry. A small puddle of pee formed beneath her chair.
Oh, fucking what? Oh, Boris.
For fuck's sake, though. Today, we have another bad ruler and another trial. This is a man who rules the world by force. At this point, the president rolled his eyes. "Shut up," said Jones, catching the movement from one of his panoptic irises. "Be quiet, you idiot," said Jones, and stuck his face so close, gun next to his cheek. The president observed not just the eyes, but the awful pathology of zit that had arisen when Jones was 16 and exploded when he was 17, leaving a star-shaped depression on his forehead. "Well, thank you for that. Today is not just the trial of this bad man," said Jones. "This bad man." "It is the trial of America, before the eyes of all the people of Britain, and before the eyes of all the people of the world. But I do not presume to be the judge myself. I do not seize and abuse the law like this man does." He shook the cuffs again. So the president jerked like a crash dummy. "Nor will I even impose the death penalty like this man does." Jerk, jerk. "To poor mentally defective Negroes in Texas. Instead, everyone in this hall will have the chance to speak. Yes, to speak in favour of him or against him, just like in a court of law.
Oh God,
then
is
the
this
world
what this
will
is going to
judge
come
you.
in?
Yeah.
Oh no! Right, I don't think either of us saw that coming.
No, I'll be honest. When we started this book, I did not see this coming. Yes, the whole world will judge America, and in a minute I will explain how it will be done. But first, I need to just nip up for a quick piss. Yes, I should have gone before I came, but you can't plan these things out to a T, can you? Come on, Mr. President. But first I must ask you all to surrender your mobile phones, and I must ask all police and other agents to give up their weapons. Please throw them in the aisle. That's right. Hurry up, or else I'll shoot again, and this time I may not miss.
I may not miss. It's a lottery, really. I've never had any firearms training, but I'm just going to blind fire into the room and see what happens.
"You see," said Purnell. They stared at the TV images of Jones the Bomb, which were now being watched in almost every country on Earth. He looked mad enough to do anything.
I can't believe how this has gone, though, where we're gonna have a trial, and it's like, oh no, fuck that, just someone fucking kill someone, for Christ's sake, like, fucking, Chapter 37, 10:27 hours. Dean stood at the top of the steps looking out over the audience as Benedict and the 4 other Arabs moved up and down the aisle. The cameras were allowed to function. Indeed, they were essential for Jones's plan, and a close-up of the terrified kid was now flashed across the nation's TV screens. In the house in Wolverhampton, Paulie was sitting on a scummy orange beanbag and eating Alpen with water, waiting to go in for the late shift at right price. Well, thank fuck Paulie's back, eh?
He's doing alright.
Nah, he said. Nah. He put his face right next to the screen so that his features were bathed in the strobing, panicky colours of his former colleague's skin. "I just do not believe it," he said. That's how he would talk, innit?
Yeah. "I simply cannot manage it, my good man."
"Oh, for God's sake," said Price the cheese, and a ladle of whey dropped from his hand and clattered to the floor of the swish new cheeseorium he had constructed with the insurance. See, why do you get the bit where they're all pulling their guns and fucking holding the president hostage? I get fucking Price the pissing cheese.
You get the greatest hits rerun.
Yeah. Next door, in the same old house in Wednesbury, Dennis Faulkner was so stunned that he thought he was having another little blip. He rose from his anti-massacred Parker Knoll.
Sorry, what was that?
No.
Okay, let's try that one more time, shall we?
He rose from his anti-macassared Parker Knoll and tried to loosen the tartan tie at his throat. "Huck, walk, walk," he said, and crashed back down again, knocking over various pottery objects ranged on the sideboard behind the chair. I think he just died.
I hope so.
Well, here's to Dennis.
Oh, good friend, Dennis.
I wanted a room with a fireplace, you brainless luggage monkey. Like the one in your brochure.
Oh, Selma, dear. I was just chatting with my good friend, Dennis. Now, smile for the camera. That's a good lad.
There was even one person in the audience who thought she recognised Dean. She had been shivering and praying and crying with fear, and then she had opened her eyes and seen him. It couldn't be him, and yet it had to be. It's your one, isn't it? Good body or whatever the fuck. There is an iron railing at the top end of Westminster Hall. Behind that fence was ranged an exotic collection from the great bestiary of British ceremonial. There was the Lord Chamberlain, an office now held by an epicene young cokehead whose family name may be found in the pages of Shakespeare.
George Osborne.
He was wearing buckled shoes, tights, a stock, and the kind of frilly frock coat favoured by Sir Mick Jagger in his Sympathy for the Devil phase.
George Osborne.
There was a man whose technical name was Silver Stick, but whose wife called him Algie. A superannuated army officer whose creaking calves, now sheathed in black silk, had once propelled him over the tri-line victoriously at Twickenham half a century ago. There was rogue dragon Oh my god.
What is happening?
I don't know. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, of course.
And there to one side, standing nearest the gate and fingering with wet grip the old ebony staff, surmounted by a lion, which had been the mark of his office since it was created by deed patent in 1350, was the gentleman usher of the Black Rod. There, because he is Sergeant at Arms of the Lords, and it falls to Black Rod to officiate all such encounters between their lordships and distinguished visitors.
God, I love British democracy, don't you?
Yeah, it's so progressive. Poor Black Rod. He had fought at Korea with the utmost dash, gallantry and dispatch. This is ridiculous, isn't it? Like, I mean, we said it would be mostly filler,
Yeah.
but fuck me, it's like 95%
Yeah,
filler.
it really
like,
is. Yeah, it's just waffle. It's not
Yeah,
filler.
yeah,
it's waffle.
you're
Because
right, it's not
like
even
it's
filler,
just
yeah.
nothing's happening. The events just pause, and we have this extended fucking ramble through whatever fucking horseshit Boris can pluck out of his tired, broken, Etonian fuckface mind. It's quite astounding how someone can waste so many pages on so little.
Fucking riveting stuff. Just starting to look like it might be getting good as well.
Yeah. Can we have a whole chapter that's just Benedict?
Yeah,
Just one
he's
by
wailing
one,
on
just
motherfuckers.
executing these motherfuckers, please.
Chapter 38, 10:28 hours. Roger Barlow sat sprawled in his seat near the back, looking up at the hammer-beam ceiling, and gave way to fear and to glassy despair. He'd bungled it. He'd bogged it up. Now he had been proved right, and Chester de Peveril had been proved wrong, and the only consolation was that Chester de Peveril was as likely as many of them to get blown to smithereens. One of the Arabs was coming down the aisle, waggling his gun and urging them all to speed up. "Give mobile," he said. "Give mobile." De Peveril chucked his across onto the stone floor. "You had better give him your phone, Rog." "I don't have one," said Barlow. He didn't like mobiles because you couldn't trust the blighters. They were technological Judases. Boris, just because your wife found all those fucking texts and that, like. There had been a god-awful moment the other day when his blinking mobile had contrived quite independently to dial his wife. He was somewhere he really shouldn't have been, not for his own good, and he was in the company of the woman in whom this ghastly reporter from the Mirror was now taking such an interest.
Yep. We kind of called this,
Before we started reading the book.
5 months.
Yeah. The woman in question seemed deliberately to have exposed her bosom, and she was looking at him imploringly. "Oh, please," she droned, "you promised. Do it for Eulalie? Eulalie? What the fuck? What? Oh, please," she droned. "You promised. Do it for Eulalie. It's a fantastic investment." Roger had smiled at her because he really wanted to make her happy, or at least stop bugging him, and then he thought he must be going mad. He could hear the voice of his conscience. It was this tiny voice squeaking at him from his breast pocket like Tinkerbell. "Oh, hi, darling," he said when he twigged. Oh, good, how are you?" "Oh, I'm alright. You sound as though you've been running." It had been, all told, quite a sticky conversation. And then another time he was waiting to vote late at night.
I'm sorry, darling. Voting at night.
Chapter 39, 10:30 hours. They, or rather Richard II, employed a man called Hugh Herland, who built the biggest and most technologically advanced hammer beam roof in the world. At the end of each hammer beam, Herland carved huge angels bearing coats of arms and staring down at the proceedings 90 feet below. In the winter, and indeed for much of the year, the cold seeps up through the clammy riverbank on which the flagstones are set. I wish I was reading Pillars of the Earth now.
I wish I was reading literally anything.
God, it's like reading all this just knowing it's all going to be cut out because like there's not even anything funny to say about it. Jason Pickle had found an inspection hatch in the bottom of the flèche, and through this he now inserted his booted feet and the knife-like creases of his fatigues. For a few seconds his legs swung in the darkness. There must be a platform beneath him, he reasoned. Why the hell else would they build a hatch here? I really wanted to just drop through and
like 200 feet. Benedict just leans over and shoots him in the head.
At the moment he dropped through the hatch, Pickle had his rifle strapped around his shoulders, and the strap had caught on the latch of the hatch. The strap might have turned into Pickle's noose had he not released himself before dropping 10 feet onto a platform built beneath the flèche. He arrived almost silently, like Errol Flynn dropping from the mizzenmast to the deck. Ah, God almighty. Then he looked up and saw his gun glinting in the light from the open hatch and dangling uselessly 10 feet above. Dean looked at the audience and couldn't believe the calm of Haroun and Habib. He tried to control his own breathing and to fill his lungs with the confidence of his creed. He hoped they were watching him in Wolverhampton. He hoped his foster father was watching him now. Above all, in the angriest part of his teenage heart, he hoped he was being watched by that beautiful girl he had called Vanessa. Vanessa with the sweet white smile and the fat red kissy lips. Fat red kissy lips.
He always obsesses over the lips.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
It's like a focal point of his hatred of women is their lips.
He wants to cut their lips off.
Yeah, and their lipstick.
Do you reckon he has like a wall with all lips into it in his basement? Vanessa with the sweet white smile and the fat red kissy lips, whom he had trusted with his heart and who had turned out to be a fornicating traitor. Kill them all, thought Dean as anger came to his aid. Kill all the people who call you a pluck out their eyes, cut off their heads, pull out their intestines with your bare hands. For a moment he looked cruel and dreadful, and hung his Schmidt in the callous posture of some Sierra Leonean child gorilla. One by one the curly-whirlies were ripped out of the ears of the USSS men, and thrown on the flags in the middle. Thrown on the flags in the middle. It's great, that. Then the agents were made to sit cross-legged on the floor in the central aisle. Blewett gave a blubbering moan of grief as he saw the humiliation of his best men. Well, at least they haven't got Kabash yet, and fuck knows what we're going to do with Pickle. Fuck knows what we're going to do with Pickle. Jones the bomb gripped the lectern and paused. The president turned and looked at the terrorist leader. He thought of making a light-hearted remark. The president was conscious not of the audience in the hall. He didn't really give a stuff about them. He was thinking about the millions of Americans who would already be watching, apathetically glomping their Cheerios and studying him on breakfast TV. They would be checking for signs of leadership, of masterfulness. Masterfulness. He opened his mouth. "Shut up," said Jones. The president closed his mouth like a guppy.
I was rolling on the floor laughing after that one. Classic.
Yeah. Jones went on. "My colleagues and I represent a group called Islamic Jihad, or the Brotherhood of the Two Mosques, and there are many injustices we would like to correct. It is now too long that the Zionist entity has been occupying illegally the homeland of my brother Arabs. We would like that to end." We respectfully ask that that ends. "We would like an end to the brutal slaughter of families, the killing of people who have nothing, who have no weapons, by missiles fired from the helicopters given to the Zionist entity by the Americans. And we would like to see an end to the corrupt and vicious regimes that are supported by the American taxpayer and by the CIA. We also demand an end to the torture and brutality in Iraq, and all the guilty to be sent to war crimes trial in The Hague." This was too much for the president. He had to say something here. This was a vital part of his political identity. "Hey," he said, "I like killing Arab children. Fuck you. Hey," he raised his eyebrows in that characteristic look of befuddlement. "We sure as hell got rid of Saddam, didn't we?"
And who was it that put him there? We've been over this, Boris. We've covered all of this.
"We got rid of Saddam," as if that is the be-all and end-all of the problems in the Middle East.
Well, basically, Saddam Hussein was in charge of the Middle East.
Yeah.
He was a really nasty boy. And we went over there and we asked him to leave, and he did. And now all the problems are fixed. And we left and we didn't cause any trouble for anybody.
Jones kept his eyes on the crowd as he whacked the president backhanded and still holding the gun over the top of his head. That doesn't make sense, does it?
That's nonsense.
Well, I think we should start today by having a little toast to the good news this morning.
Wonderful news.
Boris got the COVID. Here's to you, Boris. I hope you fucking die.
Okay. Just cleaning the shit off it. We have to remain 6 feet away from the book all the time. Chapter 40. 10:33 hours. It was the moment for many people that the Westminster Assizes became truly frightening. It was that camera frame, the president wincing with pain, his forelock buffeted out of place, that made the front page of the evening papers around the planet.
His forelock.
The presidential forelock. Pride of the Republic. God bless the USA. From his vantage point in Cobra, the Prime Minister meditated not so much on the safety of the President or the crowd, but on the future of his government. And he coughed into his head. It's just so astonishing that like a week or two ago, he was stood there on television saying, I met with many people who have COVID and I shook hands with all of them.
That was a good move, wasn't it, Boris?
I have tested positive for COVID-19.
It's sort of like everything, like this book, like everything he says. It's like, yeah, that aged well, didn't it?
Yeah. In the Shalimar all-night deli and coffee joint in Brooklyn, to take one of countless examples, the movement provoked shock. She, said Johnson Calhoun.
What the fuck?
This is just Ben Shapiro. Like, we have just full crossover now. A security guard preparing for the morning shift, removing a donut from his mouth. That ain't right. And the owner of the Shalimar, an Afghan, agreed that it certainly was not. Hands across the aisle. In the ops room, Blewett was white with hate and rage and COVID-19. Blewett balled his fists. He went purple. He groaned and developed a persistent dry cough. Jones the bomb twitched the orientation of his skull with an almost mechanical movement, like a desert fox. Skin stays where it is and the skull's moved. That's when everyone started screaming. That ain't right, said Johnson Calhoun, who had seen many skulls in his time and knew that none of them should do that. I'm sorry, my friends, said Jones, whose breathing was ragged for a second or two. But it is hard to think of any other way of making the point that this fellow is no longer in charge. To resume, he said. Like, come on, for fuck's sake. Can it get any more, like, just every fucking person in this book is Boris?
Yeah.
There are many evils for which this man is responsible, but I am a realist. This is why we in the Brotherhood of the Two Mosques are today confining ourselves to one demand. You know the prisoners of Guantanamo Bay. You know they're being kept in brutal and degrading conditions. They have not even been charged. They've not been given access to lawyers. And this, he spat so plentifully that the drops hit the mic like a pebble on a drum. From a country that presumes to lecture the rest of the world about the application of human rights. We ask only what is natural and what is right, that they be sent back to face trial in the countries where their crimes were allegedly committed. This the President can grant, but I believe he will need some persuasion.
The fact that the terrorist demands in his book are completely reasonable. We're just asking that they actually get the treatment that your law says they should get. Oh, the bastards!
In the ops room in New Scotland Yard, there was now barely room to stand. The shambles had nothing on the White House. I want a total news blackout. Get out of here! Actually says
that.
yeah, all one word. Get out of here!
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here. Get out of here, man. Shit, I'm saying.
This thing is running live on all channels. Let's send in the SEALs. Yeah, right, and watch the president get turned into lasagna on breakfast TV.
Fuck yeah, I'd love that. That's a cookery show I would watch.
Dawn was just peeping over the low hills of Missouri when a wing of stealth bombers headed in boomerang formation for Europe, startling the ducks and convincing an itinerant drunk that he had seen the first wave of an alien invasion. That's literally just the drunk.
Yeah.
Ooh. Throws the bomb.
Yeah.
I will not be doing the persuading, said Jones the bomb, and I hope never again to have to use my persuader here. It is up to all of us to do the persuading, and up to everyone watching around the world. It is now 8:34 p.m. in Australia. Some of you will be making a nice cup of Milo after your tea. I urge you, if you have views on this question, to ring up your local TV station and give a very simple answer to a very simple question. Do you believe that America should send the prisoners of Guantanamo Bay to have a fair trial in another country? Yes or no? People of the world, have your say. We will stay here all day, said Jones frothily. We will wait until Australia has gone to bed. We will wait until India and Russia and all the lands of Islam have given their opinions on this simple question. And if they vote to release the prisoners, and if you, sir, will come to this microphone and announce their release, then I swear that in the name of all that is holy, that you will be released. And if the people of this planet vote not to release the prisoners, the illegal captives of America, then of course it is very simple for us. In the office of the Director General of the BBC, they were holding a crash meeting of a kind that was by now being held in the chancelleries, banks, newsrooms, and foreign ministries of capital cities, daylit and benighted across the planet. They were about to be asked to collaborate on the biggest terroristic media stunt in history. It's very simple, said the editorial director, brackets politics, a handsome woman in her 50s, with strong traditional opinions, whose appointment was the relic of some forgotten Tory administration. We will have to refuse any cooperation whatsoever. Tell the switchboards immediately. Hang on, said the black polo necks. We can't stop people ringing up, said a man with an earring.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
If only the Tory relics could just have their quick, decisive, sensible say, but the men with polo necks and earrings just wouldn't allow it. No, I'm sorry, said the editorial director, brackets politics.
Oh, for fuck's
So we've got a new one.
Yeah.
We've got a new one. We will never forgive ourselves if we respond to a terrorist outrage by going whoring after ratings. Yes, well, I'm sorry too, said one of the 40-something polo-necked men, who was in fact the political director, brackets editorial.
Fuck's sake.
Oh, hilarious, Boris.
Yeah, it's really funny, Boris. It's almost as funny as the news that you've got COVID-19. I love the idea that it's right-wing newspaper editors that are the ones that, oh no, we couldn't possibly use a terrorist attack in order to just chase ratings.
Yeah.
But have you ever seen the Daily Mail or the fucking Telegraph or the Sun or fucking any of the other newspapers in this shithole country?
The editorial director, brackets politics, had already gathered her papers. She walked out with as much composure as she could manage, sealed herself in the executive toilet, burst into tears, calmed down, and mentally drafted a press release announcing her resignation.
I hate this.
Yes, correct. Back in the office of the Director General, it fell to another black polo neck to sum up the meeting. I think we should remember that our first mission is the Rethian mission, to explain, and frankly, concluded the Director of Political Editorial, brackets, £102,000 PA, plus car, perks, bomb-proof state sector pension, closed brackets.
Yeah, because Boris hates the rich, doesn't he?
And he hates the BBC executives.
Yeah.
Chapter 41, 10:36 hours. Jones could see that his idea was taking hold in the imaginations of his audience. They were staring at him with silent respect, busily excogitating their options.
What?
With mounting confidence, he completed his conditions. If you vote no, if you vote in favour of the most brutal and powerful country since the Roman Empire, then it goes without saying that we will obey. In fact, there is only one circumstance in which we would dream of harming this man, and that is if you vote yes to release the Guantanamo prisoners, and they are not sent home. If the world votes yes, and America says no, then I will have no choice. He turned and leered at the president. The president did his best to leer back, but even in long shot, the TV audience could see a hollow look. It was a reaction immediately detectable by those with a nose for fear. Slumped in his seat near the front, the French ambassador saw it. He shook his Beethoven hairdo. So we've got a Moses hairdo, now we've got a Beethoven
He's got a
hairdo.
Beethoven hairdo.
Confounded and depressed though he was, the énarque in him admired anything cruel and brilliant. C'est génial, ça, he said, and decided that his chances of surviving today were about 5%. What do you mean? Asked Cameron, gripping his arm. Huh? Do you mean that you think this guy's a genius? Not a genius, of course not, but the plan is certainly brilliant. But do you think he is, like, cool? It is certainly cool, wheezed the French diplomat. Cameron tried to compute it all. She tried to make sense of the Frenchman's actions, but mainly of her own actions and the actions of the man on her right.
Say actions again.
She turned to the love object, who was now sitting in the
She turned to the love object.
She took him in slowly. She took him in slowly with the anguish of one beholding a much-loved relative on the mortuary slab.
Oh! That's nice.
She looked at the leather patches on his tweed jacket that he wore even in the heat of London in July, and which heaven knows he wore in Baghdad during the bombing.
I really thought he was going to say, and heaven knows he wore in bed. Completely naked except for a tweed blazer.
I know what you're thinking, he said, but why did you? I didn't. But you made me get those passes. I know, but I swear. Everyone would know that she had been instrumental in importing these maniacs to the Palace of Westminster, and, oh lordy, her father would know. As soon as she thought of that man whose hot, dang, straight up and magnificently unnuanced worldview had until recently served as the template for her own, she felt so bad again that she toyed with the notion of weeping. And then Cameron thought, stuff it. I'm not going to cry.
American thought, stuff it.
Yeah. I'm not going to cry. I'm going to find out what's really been going on here. And that, said Jones the Bomb, is more or less all I have to say. If I think of anything else, I'll be sure to let you all know.
That's how his big speech ends. He just goes, yeah.
I think we've covered everything.
Yeah,
questions?
I'll open it up to the panel.
Laura Koonsberg. It goes without saying that there must be no attempt to tamper with the television coverage of this event. For every channel that shuts off this fascinating broadcast for political reasons, I will execute, shall we say, one hostage. Recessed into the lectern was a glass carafe from which Jones the Bomb refreshed himself greedily. He wiped his mouth and looked at the erstwhile most powerful man in the world, as if to say, not for you, Sonny.
It's Sonny. It's like, not for you, Sonny Kim.
In the ops room at New Scotland Yard, the male egos were spooling madly in all directions. One mind, a young female mind, was sitting in a corner and considering logically the problem that Jones had posed. Not there, you dummkopf! There, yelled Blewett. He was now pacing around, a limp cigar hanging from his mouth.
A limp cigar?
Completely fucking flaccid. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. This is not one of those times. I've got it. This time the female detective, whose name was Camilla, secured the attention of Deputy Assistant Commissioner Purnell. You know what, darling, he said, smiting his forehead when it was explained to him. You're flaming well right. Chaps, he said.
Chaps, Freddie!
Chaps, Freddie, my fellow Englishman. Chaps, he said, in such a way as to indicate that by chaps he meant chaps as opposed to guys. Oh, well, I'm glad you cleared that one up for us, Boris. It took Blewett only seconds to realise that his British counterpart had found the solution.
Chapter 42, 10:37 hours. For all his swaggering, Blewett was essentially a bureaucrat, and every bureaucrat knows what to do when your rival has a brainwave. You go along with it, you extol it, and then you secretly find a way of sabotaging it, while making sure you have distanced yourself from it in good time. And that is Boris Johnson in a fucking nutshell. You think the Communist Manifesto is like a short pamphlet? That is Boris Johnson's fucking political manifesto right there. Fantastic, said Blewett, when the wheeze was explained to him. There's only one problem I see here. I don't want to rain on your parade, but if this maniac sees someone pointing a gun at him loaded with a rhino tranquilizer, then he's going to pull the ripcord, no question. And anyhow, what if it doesn't knock him out? It will knock him out in a trice, said Camilla, the detective who had thought up the idea. That just happened.
Literally
like
about an inch and a half away from the first time you told us that on the page. What the fuck? I've got it. This time the female detective, whose name was Camilla, secured the attention of Deputy Assistant Commissioner Purnell.
It will knock him out in a trice, said Camilla, the detective who had thought up the idea.
It's like he predicted that it would be two different people reading those.
Yeah.
He just didn't know they'd be reading it out loud.
Hit him in the neck and he'll be away with the fairies. That's swell, said Blewett, pacing over to his mock-up and thinking the Brits could not be serious. What did they think this was? Dactari?
Yeah. Classic British bungle.
Hey.
You've made one of the classic blunders!
You only think I guessed wrong. That's what's so funny. I switched glasses when your back was turned. Ha ha, you fool! You fell victim to one of the classic blunders.
I love this idea. I love it to death. My only question is, how do we get a man in there without being seen? That's why I want to hear from Pickle.
I need to airdrop a fucking trank gun through the window to Pickle. You can grab it.
The sharpshooter was at that moment invisible. Why not, eh, Boris? Why the fuck not?
Hardly the most ridiculous thing in this book. joke so far.
He stood up to his full 6'2" and stretched his leg-like arms.
What?
This is proper Ben Shapiro right here.
Yeah.
He gave a little jump and landed back heavily, missing the platform and resting on a high crossbeam. The beam held up well, but Pickle wobbled as he landed. He's a wobbly pickle now. So, said the lead terrorist, is there no one here in this birthplace of parliamentary debate who has the courage to speak? Here is the building of Pitt, Fox, Disraeli, Gladstone, Churchill, and the great George Galloway. Alright, I'll give you that one, Boris. That was quite funny.
This has fallen in a... Pulls his jacket out and he's got a bum. Boom!
Takes his hat off.
Pulls his dyed just for men beard off.
Is no one prepared to say anything on the issue of the hour? Easy, boy, said the president. Last time a person tried to speak, you shot him in the ear. Good point, my friend, said Jones nastily. This time I have a different policy. If no one speaks by the time I count to 10, I will fire at a hostage. Yes, you again. Why not, you miserable creature? He once more indicated the wounded Dutchman, who opened his eyes and regarded his tormentor with herpetic inscrutability.
Oh, that classic human look.
The world is watching. The world is voting. Who will have the courage to speak before the bald guy gets it?
Is Roger going to be the one that stands up? We've got to be, haven't we, surely? Why else would he even be in the book otherwise?
Yeah, he'll stand up and give a bumbling Boris Johnson sitting on the fence fucking speech, and everyone will start crying, and Jones will turn himself in.
What is obviously going to happen is he'll make some impassioned speech or whatever, and Cameron will be very proud of him, and then he'll get shot straight in the head. Fingers crossed. Don't let me down, Boris. I don't know why I even bother saying that, because you were born to let me down. 1. Dean looked at the faces of the politicians nearest him. In the breast of each one was the traditional competition between the fear of appearing an idiot and the lust to star on television. 2. Ziggy Roberts, best and brightest of the new intake, felt his mouth go dry. This is it, Ziggy old man, he told himself. This is the big one. 3. You shouldn't play their games, Perry, one part of his brain told the other half, and the other half retorted vigorously. Don't be a wimp, Granger, you fool. Did the people of South Oxfordshire send you to this place that you should keep silent on the greatest international crisis of our epoch? Well, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. You must speak, Granger, you great dingbat, and speak for England. I hate this. 4. Christ on a bike, thought Roger. That should just be it for Roger's thought.
If anyone here knows why this couple should not be wed in holy matrimony, let him speak now, or forever hold his peace.
Da-da-da-da-da. Hey! Da-da-da-da.
Christ on a bike, thought Roger. I really had better get up and do the business. Fits on the floor. It was no use trying to order his thoughts, he decided.
True that.
He wanted to be as vicious and as scathing as he dared towards these terrorists without provoking them to shoot him. No, Boris, just go ahead, man. Provoke them to shoot you.
Provoke away.
5. Haroun looked at his boss, histrionically waving his automatic, and felt a twinge of annoyance. He didn't like this silly debating society approach that Jones had introduced. He smouldered at the crowd and spat with a splatch on the flagstone occupied by the front row.
Every Arab in this book,
Yeah.
just gobbing all over the fucking place.
This was a war, and he, Habib and Jones and Dean, and their Arab brothers and their sister were fedayeen. Indeed, it was doctrinally vital that this action of theirs should be construed as a military action. When they all died, as they surely would, Haroun believed that he would die as a soldier, and this was theologically essential to Haroun, because whoever kills himself in any way will be tormented that way in hell, and it was part of the deal Haroun had made with himself that he would not be going to hell. On the contrary, he was going to a place more lovely and more perfect than you and I could possibly imagine.
Where's that?
Bognor Regis. Somewhere a blissful tent had been pitched for him in the clouds, piled with...
Oh, that sounds lovely. I can see why he wants to blow himself up now.
Somewhere a blissful tent had been pitched for him in the clouds, piled with silken cushions, cooled by the perpetual trickle of holy water from a turquoise fountain of vaguely Mudajar design, cooled by the perpetual trickle of
You just did it again. You said potential twice.
Oh, fuck's sake. See, now I've tripped up on one word and now I'm just fucked. Cooled by the perpetual trickle...
You just did it again.
Oh God! Oh my God! What's happened? Oh my God! What's happened?
Boris Johnson, that's what's happened.
Oh fuck! Okay.
Perpetual.
Yes, perpetual.
You got it right the first.
Yeah.
This is all staying in.
I don't trust myself. I don't
for
trust myself anymore. Cooled by the perpetual trickle of holy water from a turquoise fountain of vaguely Mudajar design. Peace after the miserable American-induced stress of this earthly existence.
I feel that.
Yeah. He would lie back on the pillows, and in one hand he would manipulate the celestial nargile.
I'm very worried about where this is going. I don't want to know what he's doing with the other hand. I mean, I don't know what he's doing with that hand, frankly. I dread to think what he's doing with the other.
The celestial nargile, bubbling away with hashish 1,000 times more delicious than anything that could be found in the valleys of Afghanistan. And his other arm would be gently looped around the exposed stomach of the first of his statutory 72 almond-eyed virgins.
There we go. Ding, 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 ding. He mentioned the title.
Slowly he would ease off her filmy pyjama bottoms and prepare to enjoy her in a way that his imam had assured him was both decently spiritual and infinitely carnal. She would bend over him, bringing her breasts even closer to his face, laughing low and praising him and dissolving all the onanistic wretchedness of his previous life, and oh, he thought, in the name of Allah, I had better be careful.
Like he's literally
He's gonna start cracking one out in the middle of a fucking hostage situation.
He just puts his gun on his shoulder and just turns to face the wall. I say, old man, is that terrorist engaging in a furious act of onanism? I didn't know in front of those parties.
Spread it.
Fetch the butter.
He found himself staring irresistibly at Cameron, just 10 feet or so away in her low-cut top. Oh, I thought it was over.
Just when I thought he'd gotten as racist as he could be, now we have the leering, lust-filled Arab for the young, blonde-haired white girl. He just can't contain himself.
He felt the surge of fundamentalist rage that inspired the pathetic Islamo-fascistic male. He stared with that perverted Wahhabi mixture of lust, terror and disgust at this portrait of sexually emancipated Western woman. He glared at her thighs and her unambiguously exuberant bosom and yearned to punish her entire society, punish America for her criminal role in pioneering feminism.
It's lucky that there's no Western men that are...
No.
Like, you know,
Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson and all of his friends, for example. The British government.
Jermaine Greer. With sweating fingers, he touched the stitch pouch in which the one-way Nokia was stored, and waited for the moment when he could wash his soul in steep-down gulfs of liquid fire. Come on, Jones, he thought. 6. It was a measure of her devotion to Adam, and indeed her awful, inescapable feminine deference, that as Jones began to count, she had simply assumed the love object would take charge. He's just had this whole thing about this Middle Eastern Muslim guy, like, oh, he can't understand this Western idea of feminism and female emancipation.
And then Boris just
does it.
He too cannot conceive of women or of feminism.
Her awful, inescapable feminine deference. 7.
I love how, like, we thought that because it was coming to the end that it would start picking up the
And it's
pace,
done
and he's
the
actually
opposite.
managed to find a literary device by which he could actually slow things down to absolute crawl. Next he'll be counting down in like milliseconds.
Dean was staring at Cameron and thinking she was one of the tastiest birds he had ever seen. Here he was, barely 19 and about to splatter his guts over the walls. He might even be responsible for her death. He became aware that she was returning his look. His Sierra Leonean child gorilla smile became a guilty smirk as he turned his face away. 8. Verdammt Brits, thought the Dutch ambassador, and prepared to stand up himself. Tiens, thought the French ambassador, also girding himself for action. They need not have worried, because at that moment, like the digits of a child's cash register, about 15 suits sprang up across the hall, and now more were rising all the time as buttock after buttock unclove itself from the little gilt chairs. Now that is more like it, said Jones the bomb. He turned to the president, and the president noticed how the fellow was sweating under the TV lights, and how a drop had run down his brow, irrigated the cyclopean zit depression, and then trickling away into the long, furry, undivided caterpillar of his brow. "You choose the speaker," said Jones the bomb. "Which of these people do you think will speak best for you?" "Okay, buddy," said the president. "Let's all keep calm here." He shielded his eyes and looked for a conservative-seeming fellow, someone with moderate opinions who would come over well before a global audience. Yeah, as if the Conservatives have moderate opinions. Murder the poor and the disabled and women and blacks and gays. That's moderate. Roger Barlow stiffened as he saw the presidential finger pointed straight at his breastbone. "Oh, brother," he murmured, and had begun to say, when ladies and gentlemen screamed the man on his right. Chapter 43, 10:38 hours. It was Chester de Peverell who had risen a millisecond after him, and whose desire to star in the world's biggest televised balloon debate was now a hormonal imperative. "Don't worry, mate," said Chester, placing his hand on Roger's shoulder and applying no uncertain pressure. The president stared uneasily at him. So did Jones the bomb. Roger sat back, folded his arms, and gave way to the blackness of ungovernable shame. "Well, it's about time you felt some ungovernable shame, Boris, you fucking horrible piece of shit."
This is like a metaphor for the part of Boris that wants to be an actual politician, that wants to actually do something of value, and the cowardly, self-aggrandising TV personality side of him just sits that part down and just waffles nonsense into the ether moments before being gunned down by an Arab terrorist.
That's the trouble, and before we sort it out, we've got to understand why people hate America, and from my perspective, from where I sit, there's a lot of factors that have to be taken into account. "Shut up!" shrieked Jones. "What are you trying to say? Are you an imbecile? You must speak to the motion," said Jones. "Silence," said Jones, who had the air of a rattled bus conductor, about to turn vicious with a bilker. Fucking bilker.
A fucking bus conductor.
Yeah.
The fuck are you on?
Boris, mate, there haven't been bus conductors since,
Since you.
In the 17 minutes since Jones the bomb had first handcuffed the president, the TV audience had been growing like bacteria in a petri dish. They were in many cases sickened and horrified by what was going on, but there was also a large number of people, good people, who thought America had a case to answer, not just on the narrow question of Guantanamo Bay, but more generally. There were millions who were also yearning to give the Americans a lesson, and in the sheep-like way of all human beings, they wanted to see which way this cook would go. That shows a lot about what Boris thinks of us, doesn't it? Chester de Peverell goggled. Across the planet, audiences in sports bars went silent, and trembling fingers turned up the volume on the zapper. The fucking zapper. The zapper. Oh, God, fuck off, you dick. The TV chef stared hopelessly around the chamber, as out of his depth as a soup-soaked crouton. "My honest opinion is, yes. Yes, of course the prisoners should go back, and I say that without having an anti-American bone in my body. In fact, some of my best friends are Americans."
Chapter 44, 10:40 hours. It was the tipping point. Chester's moronic answer, arrived at with all the ratiocination of a donkey hesitating between two equal piles of hay, was colossally influential. This mere cook, this faux naive student of onions and gravy, had given cover and legitimation to the millions who wanted to vote to give America a bloody nose. Again, it's just a classic bad faith argument where you just make an idiot say the correct answer so that you can imply that it somehow is wrong. China had recently seen a prodigious growth in the number of TVs and telephones of all kinds. Not that the Chinese saw any particular need to thank America for the benefits of capitalism. "Yes," cried liberated young Chinese girls in pencil skirts as they dialed the TV station. "Yes," said Chinese human rights activists into their snazzy new Sony Ericssons. Never mind all that American think tanks had done to campaign against the Chinese gulags.
For fuck's sake. God bless America. Fuck off, you cunts. What about all that those Chinese activists that he's talking about did against the fucking gulags? You know, they're the ones who are actually campaigning against it. But, American think tanks are the... fucking
What the
unreal.
Yes, now was the time to hold America to account. Like, the way that the tone of all of this is that that's somehow unreasonable,
Yeah.
or that it's just some
Yeah.
petty vengeance.
Well, it's funny because I said earlier, didn't I, you know, how funny it is that the big bad terrorists, their demand is actually something that's incredibly reasonable.
Yeah.
But now I'm realising that maybe we're supposed to feel that that's actually not reasonable.
I'm
Fair
really
trials are not reasonable.
Yeah, I'm really not sure what he thinks of that as a demand.
He probably doesn't have an opinion on it one way or the other.
Yeah. Slowly, like some storm being incubated in the armpit of Africa before it starts swirling round and round, gaining speed as it moves over the Atlantic, drenching Bermuda, then breaking out with hurricane force over the coast of North Carolina, the unthinkable was starting to become the politically correct. But just because I love America, said Chester de Peveril, that does not mean I support American foreign policy or American farm policy. They fill their beef with hormones, and then they dump it on the markets of developing countries and destroy the livelihood of those farmers. Do you know what happened to the Vietnamese catfish industry? He demanded. The audience in the hall coughed and fidgeted. Even the Vietnamese catfish fishermen, watching from their pool tables, wondered quite how this was relevant. I mean, really? Should I explain to you why it's relevant, Boris? Do I really have to explain why destroying countries' economies is, like, a bad thing?
Oh, the Vietnamese catfishing industry. Who gives a fuck about that?
And he has to slip in the, the Vietnamese catfishermen, they agree with me. I imagine they would probably be quite interested to hear somebody actually bring that up. Listen, Chester, said Roger Barlow, why don't you just put a sock in it for the time being? Chester paused. He was being heckled, and he knew from the studio audience at Chester Minute that a good heckle can be turned to gold. Do shut up, Chester, said Roger. These people are murderers, and my old friend Roger doesn't want to hear my view of American cheese, which strikes me in a way as being not that surprising, because what you get from politicians like Roger is just like American cheese, processed and heat-treated to the point of macrobiotic extinction. How many fucking times is he going to use the same phrase while talking about cheese? To the point of macrobiotic extinction. I could just do a supercut right now of the fucking 27 times he's used that exact phrase in this book. Chester was quite oblivious to his surroundings, with the Asperger's syndrome, the quasi-refusal to relate to the feelings of other people that begins to afflict those who spend their evenings in star dressing rooms and their days absent-mindedly scanning the face of everyone they pass to see if they have been recognised. Sorry, is he... I'm confused if he's saying that Chester has that and the other stuff, or if he's actually saying that Asperger's syndrome isn't real.
I think he's basically saying that it's like he's developed Asperger's syndrome by being this TV star. Either way, it's quite offensive.
That's fucking unreal. The quasi-refusal.
Yeah.
So he's suggesting that, in part, they're just putting it on. Let's be honest. It's good to see you, Rog. You know, folks, at university, he was known as Roger the Artful Todger, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's been up to some kind of beastliness again, wanging that old donger in the kedgeree. I have no doubt.
I just want to make it clear to, like, Americans watching this.
That's not English.
That's not English. That's not how English people speak. I have no fucking clue what that means.
Chapter 45. 10:43 hours. It was still early days, and even in countries like China, people were delaying before casting their votes. Phone sockets were ripped out of walls, handsets were hidden under cushions, while decent people wrangled about the limits of respectable anti-Americanism. One Chinaman told his brother to go and copulate with a pangolin in a lake. That's aged well. A man in a muddy tracksuit was being shown into the ops room in New Scotland Yard, accompanied by Sergeant Louise Botting of Horseferry Road. It was Dragan Panic. The tow truck operative.
The former fucking Yugoslav war criminal. Yay!
Is that them? Said Deputy Assistant Commissioner Purnell. At that moment the cameras were panning across the hall. Yes, he exclaimed. I know him anywhere, that creepy man.
President.
What are you going to do? He asked numbly. That, said Deputy Assistant Commissioner Purnell, is something we are having a look at now. It is well known that in his younger days, Henry VIII of England was very far from the bloated, fat-kneed creature of caricature. Great.
Yeah, let's just start talking about Henry the fucking Eighth.
I mean, it's about time we went back hundreds of years. And he also played tennis, which comes, as everyone knows, from tenez, the word you called out at courtly matches as you prepared to serve, and as you instructed your opponent to get a grip on his racket. In 1532, he built a splendid indoor facility at Hampton Court, but at some point before that date, he must have seen the possibilities of Westminster Hall. We know he must have played here because in 1923, when they were making making repairs to the hammer beams, they came across some brown and shriveled objects in the eaves. They were of leather and stuffed with hair. They were among the first tennis balls. One can imagine the scene. It is a bright morning in the springtime of his reign. The sun strong enough outside to fill the hall with a blue smoky light. Enter Henry, determined to work up an appetite for swans stuffed with goose, stuffed with vole, or whatever he is proposing to eat for lunch. After a suitably deferential pause, he is followed by his partner, a nervous, silken-haired young courtier called Sir Charles Dispenser. The king announces that he will serve. Sir Charles says this is a first-class plan. The king is inspired to make a joke. This just keeps going. I've got to be brutally honest with you. This ain't stopping anytime
The
soon.
latest iteration of Price the Cheese is
Henry VIII himself.
We've got a flashback to Henry VIII playing tennis.
Oh, it's a daydream. It's not even a flashback.
Yeah.
This is pure speculation.
Yeah. What is happening?
I broke free on a Saturday morning. I put the pedal to the floor, headed north on Mills Avenue, and listened to the engine roar. My broken house behind me and good things ahead. A girl named Kathy wants a little of my time. 6 cylinders underneath the hood, crashing and kicking. Ah, listen to the engine whine. I am gonna make it through this year. If it kills me, I am gonna make it through this year. If it kills me.
The far right will push us to oblivion. Only a committed, transformative, and truly international democratic socialist project can deal with the challenges we face. And we say this constantly on the show because it's true. It's the urgent message of our time. It's the only way we can synchronize restoring necessary national sovereignties in the face of global capital so that people can regulate their environmental concerns, promote public health at the expense of global predatory capital, and then at the same time fight for the rights of migrants and refugees, dismantle the criminalization of people moving across the globe, most often as a result of either the climate crisis, U.S. adventurism, or other forms of economic devastation. We need this form of internationalization, the visceral sense of justice. That has to be the driver of it. We have to take that sense of moral purpose and commitment to what is still often nerdy, pathetic, sad, wonky, professional, crappy, bleak, passive-aggressive shit U.S. Democratic Party politics. That needs to be washed out with an actual energy of solidarity, commitment, loyalty, and a ruthless commitment to an actual new agenda.